Street Fighter EX3 was developed and produced by Arca and Capcom, with the latter doing most of the publishing. It's always been rumored that Sony lit a fire under Capcom's heels to get Street Fighter EX3 released as a launch title, and while I've never come across an official response from any company, well, come on, it's not exactly hard to see how the game might have been rushed. Sometimes I think that whenever someone says, this looks like a PS2 game, they're really just thinking about early PS2 games like Street Fighter EX3. Even so, it sports a sort of character deformation and size manipulation that sadly fell out of favor during the second half of the 2000s, and I love that stuff, so it's a great looking game in my book, and EX3 still sports the rock-solid controls built on EX Plus Alpha's foundation. EX3 also featured almost every character from previous EX games, save for Hayate, who might have lost his slot to Nanase again, Alan and
Blair,
who were too busy fighting a Volvo ripoff in a Funhouse castle at the time, and Akuma, who is probably still too scared of Garuda to return. And it showcased an early, transitional stage of the create a character trend, the create a character with a prepackaged storyline that can't act as a self-insert phase, through the character Ace. Ace was, understandably, tied to the single-player content of the game, and because of his nature as a custom character, he didn't see a lot of play and competition as a result, but he's still a signature part of the game, seeing as how he's tied to the game's trial mode. His design actually carbon dates EX3 a little further along than the previous games. Wireframe characters had begun to lose their novelty after the cyber-crazy 90s, so the Cycloids were out and this vague roughneck character was in. But as a follow-up to the EX series in particular, it made a lot of drastic changes that caused knock-on effects throughout the game's life. Street Fighter EX3 retained the 6-button system that previous games in the Street Fighter and EX series had, and kept the Super Cancel and Meteor combos from Street Fighter EX1 and 2, as well as a few character themes from said games. But it ditched the Excel combo mechanic that had been introduced in EX2, and reworked the old guard break attack animations as surprise blows, aka heart attacks from Fighting Layer, glowing overhead attacks that were first introduced in said game. The input, strong plus forward, aka medium punch plus medium kick, was the same, but the guard breaking property was gone, although heart attacks would still cause a stagger on a grounded character when it landed. A new mechanic found in EX3 was the momentary combo, which let players use designated follow-ups to most special moves by pressing punch, kick, or the heart attack input. The fun thing about this is, while a few of those follow-ups were exclusive to this mechanic, most of them were just the same moves that you could perform manually, and the move strength would match the strength of the button you pressed, with all of the same properties, i.e., if you hit a Hadouken with Ken and then tap heavy kick at the same time, you get his heavy kick Tatsu, which keeps going for a few seconds more than the other versions. EX3 also introduced a tag system, which was part of another then-recent trend of adding tag team wrestling gimmicks to everything. What sets this apart from Capcom's own Versus or Rival School series, or stuff like SNK's 2-on-2, 3-on-3, or 4-on-4 gimmicks, or even Namco's Tekken Tag Tournament, which was recent at the time, is the art of the run-in. Put simply, by pressing the change button, or hard punch and hard kick together, your tag team partner runs into the thick of it to switch places with your point character. In EX3's case, tags were treated as resources and were managed by the tag gauge, which had roughly 3 seconds of cooldown after use, so you could tag characters in and out of a combo sequence if you wanted to. Some characters, like Ken, had good synergy with pretty much any character, especially if they had good momentary combos that could keep opponents in hit stun long enough for the tag character to jump in mid-combo, like the aforementioned example of Ken's Hurricane Kick. That said, any character could set up tag team action with the Critical Parade, a 2-stock special that lets both members of a team use unlimited supers so long as you activate it with the tag gauge. It's similar to the duo team attack from Marvel vs. Capcom, or the cross assault that would show up in Street Fighter Cross Tekken in the future. Oh, fun fact, this was one of the handful of non-sports games for the PS2 that used the multi-tap early on, allowing 4 players to control each character in 2 separate teams, which was also something Street Fighter Cross Tekken would use in the future. And since each character had their own pools of resources, the options they had to work with only increased as the round went on, until at least one character of the team was knocked out. Even then, good use of the tag function would pay off, as the character's emotional flow would put all of the knocked out characters meter onto the surviving characters meter, leaving the player with up to 6 stocks of meter to use once the tag was made. And during the handoff, the remaining character powers up with a shining aura and rippling shockwaves in an invulnerable state, very similar to the super illusion gimmick from Fighting Lair. All of these changes naturally affected high-level play, and EX3 developed a dual nature because of it. Now, you may be thinking, DM, aka Soust, aka whatever name you come up with next to avoid embarrassing yourself any further, what do you know about comp play in Street Fighter EX3? I've never seen you play this game. Well, I've mentioned more than once that I cut my teeth on Street Fighter EX3 because the game did see some play in places like the Philippines and parts of the Caribbean. And I can give 100% anecdotal evidence that Antigua put time into Street Fighter EX3 almost as much as it did Bloody Roar, Primal Fury, and Super Smash Bros. Melee, at least until Budokai 1 came out. Even now, sets of matches for EX3 still trickle out online. Sadly, I can't tell you the state of the game at the time of this recording. I barely leave the house unless I work, and from what I've seen online, it's EX2 Plus that's catching its second wind. Which is great. That's a great game too, and I'm glad it's getting new blood. All that means, though, is that I can't tell if EX3 has any new blood as well, Maximilian vids notwithstanding. Point is, though, there's plenty of footage of high-level play on the web, and I can draw my conclusions from that and my own foggy memories. Comparing EX3 to EX2, the most obvious change is that the tag gauge replaced the Excel system as the biggest contributor to a team's damage. Dalzim, for example, lost his godly confirm from any angle into 1/3 of your health niche, and similar characters who had similar gimmicks in the previous game don't have that there, but there's a more uniform source of damage thanks to the tag gauge, whether it's through tag combos or critical parades or whatever. But there are other, more subtle changes as well. Basically, high-level play switch gears a lot. When both players' tag meters are spent, players engaged in the typical Street Fighter EX neutral play. Lots of crouching, MP or MK cancels into safe specials, that sort of thing. And when one of both of them got their tag back, matches would shift into a tag game, in the sense that any solid stray hit or throw could lead to a clean escape for the point character, and maybe even a combo afterwards. Bag tag attempts would naturally end up with both characters getting clipped. Throws in particular were surprisingly effective after a cancel due to their catch throw properties. Players could bait out punishes, tag cancel, and grab a character before the punish attacks active frames, which would allow the point character to throw and leave, while the partner character either stood around like a goof or willingly caught the thrown character into a combo afterwards. In retrospect, official tag throws would have really opened EX3 up, and it's a shame that Zangief and Darun only have a meteor combo that kind of acts like one, but that's a whole other tangent, and I guess considering that some of the character-specific meteor tag combos still tagged out in the process, I guess it's not too far off. Anyway, the typical Street Fighter metagame was there too. Some characters were strong in every situation, while others were great in specific setups or picked apart players that didn't know their tech. The typical stuff. Some characters had fantastic momentum combos for combo fodder, while others had different functions for their momentum combos. Some characters had quick, snappy heart attacks that could open up unattentive players pretty quickly, while others had slow ones that could easily be blocked on reaction. There were pros and cons for every character, and that naturally lent itself to a decent amount of team composition. You could pick Ryu and Ken for every match for the rest of your life and find success, but there was some value in picking unofficial teams too, even if you'd miss out on those sweet meteor combo tag moves. Although, again, a generic version of those moves would have been great, and it's something Street Fighter Cross Tech can eventually piece together, in a sense. I should acknowledge at this point that this video is not sponsored by Namco, Bandai Namco, or any associated companies. Paying 3 compliments to Cross Tekken is unusual, but it's purely for the sake of comparison. Anyway, as far as I know, there's only one revision for EX3, the North American release, which fixed a couple of issues the game had with dithering, particle effects, and slowdown. In addition to adding a move list to the pause menu, which seems silly now, but at the time that sort of thing wasn't standardized still. But in addition to that, Arca added some options in the training mode as well. In the Japanese release, players already had access to a super cancel toggle, which when turned off allowed players to cancel one super move into itself rather than into another super move, as is EX tradition. The North American release added a toggle for juggling as well, which would basically allow players to juggle characters to their heart's content so long as they could make contact with the vulnerable character's hurt box. Neither of these changes bled over into the main game, unfortunately, but hey, it's good combo video fodder. It's unfortunate that the game only had these 2 releases, as Arica always had their best successes with revisions of their EX games, and I think a run or 2 in arcades would have done the game some good. That said, at the time EX3 came out, fighting games were starting to become saturated, and while that wouldn't have stopped Capcom from plowing ahead with more Street Fighter games, I can't fault them or Arica for putting the EX series on hiatus. I still have no idea of any of the details of this game's development, but EX3's final state is proof that changing a game's formula with an idea in mind, rather than making change for change's sake, can still produce something unique and worthwhile. This video is probably the 50th Street Fighter EX3 video put out this quarter on YouTube. I hope that gets me a prize or something.